Morning everyone, welcome to a snowy northeast Scotland. We've had some very stormy weather over the last week or so, and it's resulted in this big dumping of snow, which is very beautiful but also makes things a little harder to do. I've got to go and get a hay bale. Hi.
It's a bit difficult.
Here you go. Right. Good job, girls. Beep beep. Beep beep. Hello. There you go. Just leave it there for them.
I know.
Just let them eat it from there. What a beautiful day.
It's so nice.
Really gorgeous out there. Just got some hay for the goats because they've finished everything that's in here. I got a new hay delivery just recently, just a night or so ago before the worst of the snow came, I think it was, wasn't it?
We're really lucky.
So that means the goatee girls have got plenty of hay. Yeah, just take a little bit up to the sheep. But yeah, a couple of days ago before the snow arrived, we started seeding in the polytunnel. Rosa was sowing tomatoes and aubergines and peppers, all the kind of hot climate crops that we need to get started really well in advance, putting them on heat mats in the house. But let's have a look at what she was getting up to.
Quite nice in here.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. We've just come into the polytunnel to sow our seeds, our early seeds for the year ahead. We've got the tomatoes and peppers and things. Usually we come in here at this time of year to start sowing. Normally it would be for our CSA scheme that we run, that's Community Supported Agriculture Scheme, and that's something that we usually run as a veg box where we sell produce to our local community. We're taking a year off of that this year, partly to do with expecting a wee one. But also wanting to explore some other enterprises on the farm. So this is the first year that James and I will be growing for the family, and that's really exciting for us because we've never done that together before. So there's a lot of familiar feelings of coming in here right now, but also quite strange to think we're not sowing these large amounts of seeds, and we've not been in here for quite a long time either. So it's very we might do a little bit of a tidy up as well.
Definitely needs a bit of a tidy up in here. It's always a little bit neglected in here at this time of year. Because of the nature of our veg box business, we very rarely have the polytunnel in use throughout winter because we never used to grow winter veg for our veg boxes. So there's only ever just a little bit of vegetables in here for the house. It's quite a quiet place during winter, or it gets used as a nursery for any fruit trees that have arrived. They get healed in here before going out to the final place in the forest gardens and hedgerows and things. If you want to see some detailed videos about the different fruit trees and shrubs that we've bought and who we've bought them from and why we've bought them, we've made some videos over at our Patreon site. So if you're interested in seeing them and supporting us, you can click the link above and visit our Patreon. But yeah, as Rosa was saying, it's really strange to be coming in here to do seeding and not seeding at those large quantities that we've had to do for supplying our CSA veg box scheme. Over the last 6 years we've been doing that, so this is the first time really that Rosa and I have been deciding what vegetables we need to grow in what quantities just for the family, just for us, for me, Rosa, my mother who lives next door, my daughter Mila when she visits, and of course our wee one that we're going to be having a baby in 3 months' time, as Rosa just said.
Who will like vegetables.
So very exciting looking at this space and thinking how it's going to be managed over the next year for family use. We'll be selling some surplus veg still.
But we're interested to find a kind of nice balance. It's going to be a lot of learning for us to actually learn how the scale works for the family here.
Definitely.
So you know, we're going to go through a number of years of growing a bit too much of this or a bit too little of that. Obviously things change every year anyway, but so that'll be a really interesting thing to see how we can still connect with the community, but maybe not run the veg box as we've been running. And as we've often said as well, we're going to take all of that professionalism that we've been running the veg box with and hopefully bring that into how we run the garden for home.
Apply it to our home market garden.
Yeah.
That's definitely something that we've learned over the last few years, is that obviously to run a market garden, no matter your scale, whether we're talking 1/4 of an acre or 5 or 10 acres of market garden, you need to do it with a professional mindset. And we've realized that if you want to be self-sufficient or self-reliant, grow some of your own veg at home, you do need that mindset as well, of a professional approach to growing, of keeping records, using the appropriate tools, because the whole point is that you want to grow a large amount of food for yourself and your family. And it's very easy to let your garden be neglected and really not get as much out of it as you should do, or the money that you put into buying seeds and soil preparation, etc. at the start of the season, you have to carry that on to the end point, which of course is getting a bountiful harvest. You do really need to keep a mindset, even if you're wanting to be a completely closed off to the world, self-sufficient type person, which isn't really our aim. Got to point that out. Self-sufficiency's never really been the aim here. If you want to do that, you do need an air of professionalism with that to be able to get a really good end product. We have, of course, always been growing food for ourselves. While we're growing food to sell, we have, of course, had excess that we took into our own kitchen. But on the whole, most of the veg was always destined to be sold and to go out into our local community. We often ended up getting the sort of more slug-eaten parts of the leaves, or really, really wonky veg, because we always wanted to get a really nice product going out to our customers. We are going to miss supplying local people with food and filling that niche as a local producer. That was very important to us. Give us a very good warm feeling in our hearts, being farmers for our local community. But we're very excited to do it for ourselves this year and for our family that we're growing.
So I'm just sowing our tomatoes. I'm doing them in these larger seed trays. So normally it's kind of one variety has multiple of these trays. But I decided to just try and put all of the varieties of tomatoes that we're doing this year. We only have limited space on a couple of heat mats. I'm trying to kind of keep them in as small a space as possible until I see how well the germination goes. Then I can pot them on and try and work out what to do from there in terms of space. The ones that I've just put in are called Jen's Tangerine. We mostly get all of our tomato seeds from Real Seeds. They just seem to have a really interesting selection of tomatoes. They're ones that are specifically bred for the kind of shorter, colder climates that we have here in the UK, especially here up in the northeast of Scotland. So yes, the first one is Jen's Tangerine. Grew this for the first time last year. It was really good. It's a kind of large cherry tomato, and as the name implies with tangerine, it's a lovely kind of bright orangey yellow colour and really tasty, which was the important thing to find out from actually growing them last year, so recommend that. Another one is called Moskvich Vigorous Vine Tomato. This was another one that we grew last year. It's more of a kind of, it's a larger, beefier tomato. It's Russian, as you might have got from the name. And it just says here it's a large red slicer, but verging on beefsteak size. And they did get really nice and big, and they still maintained their kind of sweet flavour and didn't get too mealy. So these were really good, so we decided to grow these again this year. And then we're on to the ones that we've grown on other years but weren't able to get last year because we didn't buy our seeds early enough, and a lot of them sold out. So this one's called Stupis. I know that someone's told me how to pronounce this correctly and I've forgotten. Yeah, it says it's a 1954 variety from Eastern Europe. and it's the earliest of all of their vine tomatoes. Now, we didn't grow it last year, so I don't have the clearest of memories of it, but I do remember the name and how many times I said it was brilliant, so I can remember that it was good. It just, I think, grew very vigorously and produced a lot of tasty tomatoes, which is what you want. And then one of the last ones we've got here is the Latar, which I always go on about. I can remember this one. It's quite a strange tomato. It's a cherry tomato. It's the only tomato that I found has grown successfully outdoors up here. And that was really by accident. One year, just didn't have space in the polytunnel. I totally neglected these plants. You know, I threw them in the ground outside because I felt bad just leaving them in their pots. And yeah, didn't look after them at all. And they still produce tomatoes. So it was, yeah, that was the ultimate test of a tomato that you want to grow, one that really doesn't take any looking after. It's a bush variety, so you don't need to prune it, but you want to give it that space to just sprawl around. It really does sprawl, and it doesn't look like your classic tomato plant. It's a very open kind of growth pattern, and this just really helps the kind of sunlight reach all of the sections of the plant. I really recommend this one to anyone, especially in Scotland, who wants to kind of have a easy to look after and productive cherry tomato. And then the last one is one that I'm not 100% sure will be brilliant, but I did grow it in place of the Latar that I couldn't buy last year, and it's called Coralic F1, and I got that one too, and that's just going to be filling in the same role as the Latar. It's a cherry tomato, bush variety. It kind of sprawls all around, and it was quite productive. I only grew it outdoors last year, and it was pretty good, although the tomatoes were tiny. But I'm going to give it another chance because we grew it in our compost that we bought for the no-dig system, and that was quite low fertility. There was just a lot of things that meant that it maybe didn't have its best chance at proving itself, so I want to give it another chance. And that's it for the tomato varieties. Okay, that's the rain on, so it's nice to be in the polytunnel, but I'm gonna have to shout. Just finished sowing the tomatoes. I've also done some peppers there. We've got a sweet pepper variety called Semero. That's from Real Seeds. Also a chili pepper as well called Chinese Dragon Tongue. We haven't had a huge success with growing either chilies or sweet peppers in the last few years, only tried with 1 or 2 varieties. So I hope that we just need to find the right variety, and I have met quite a few people on tours and things who have talked about growing sweet peppers and chilies in the local area successfully. So just got to keep on trying. The labelling we use is just masking tape pasted onto the front of our seed trays. I find that's really great. It doesn't wash off. Yeah, it sticks really well. Yeah, it's just really simple and easy. Just a good Sharpie and masking tape is all you need. And we've used that for years and never changed it because we've never come up with anything better really. So now I'm just going to be sowing some celery and some aubergine, and then that's me done with the early seeds.
Alright, and so I'll take this up to the sheep and then come in for breakfast.
Yeah. Inside.
Alright, see inside. Come on then, do you want to go see the sheep? Oren is pretty good with his commands. He knows what see the sheep means. He knows what get the goats means, although he sometimes gets a bit carried away with his work and can get a bit snippy with some of the animals. A bit too much snapping at them, especially with the geese. We can use them to help us herd the geese. And yeah, if the goats have gone astray or one of the goats has run off, typically Mandy, finding some grazing somewhere where we don't want it to graze. Say get the goats to Oren and he usually runs off and helps get them moving for us. Oren spends his time just running up and down the fence line, waiting until I've spent time with the sheep, just checking from every possible viewpoint. The shepherd's hut, a nice big dumping of snow on its roof. Rosa and I spent the day in the shepherd's hut yesterday. We had to be out of the house because we had a mason in doing some work on lifting our fireplace lintel up. This is one component of the big kitchen makeover that we've set ourselves the task of doing. Definitely an area of work that we weren't confident to do ourselves. I doubt this lintel has been lifted or changed in the 130 years since the house was built. Because we're getting a new cook stove fitted, we've bought ourselves a wood-fired range oven so that we can undertake cooking a lot easier on wood-fueled stoves. Obviously we could cook on top of the stove that we had, but there's no oven facilities and no hot plates, so we've decided to make a bit of a leap and buy ourselves a beautiful wood-fired range, which will be coming within the next few weeks. So first job was to raise the lintel, because the lintel on the fireplace as we've known it is quite low, and when you lift up the lids, the pans on the cook stove, they were going to hit up against the lintel. So we had to get in a mason. It seems like a big job, but it's hopefully we'll never have to do it again for another 100 years or so. We couldn't just reuse the lintel in the current fireplace because it had a crack in it, and if we hadn't touched the lintel, that crack would have been fine. It would have lasted for decades more, but because we were moving it, it would crack when we moved it and we wouldn't be able to reuse it. So we found a lintel in our ruined blacksmith building, the smithy. So this new lintel has been put into place with all that history. The blacksmith building actually predates our cottage. It was built before the cottage was, and our cottage was built in 1886. And the blacksmith as a building was on the maps long before that. So this lintel that's come out from the blacksmith, which is now being set into our kitchen, it's a fantastic feeling. It's, like I said, it's quite a big concept to think that maybe this is the first time this lintel has been changed in the house, but it's going to look great. It's not finished yet. The lintel is being held in place by some massive big pieces of metal and wood, and looks a bit crazy, but it gives you an idea of what it looks like. We'll go in now. You go and get your breakfast, Oren? Your breakfast? Yeah, you do. Alright, so we're out in the polytunnel.
It's warm, toasty.
It's the warmest place to be today, definitely. Yeah. We thought we would come out and start working on some of the beds in the polytunnel. We're going to be landscaping the polytunnel a lot differently this year. We're going to try a new technique. We're going to try a new way of gardening. We're going to try something new.
We love new things. What are you doing?
So this year we've decided we're going to change the orientation of the beds. Currently we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's running east to west through the polytunnel along its length, and they're all 15 meters long by 75 centimeters wide.
And all of our beds in the market garden are those dimensions, so that's why we could only have them this orientation.
But we're breaking out of that rule this year.
Yes.
We're going against our own
judgment. We're going against our own advice.
Yeah.
And we're going to change up the beds to a different length. And we're going to do the beds running north to south. That means we're going to have a lot more beds, but a lot shorter beds. Because I guess we're talking 1, 2, 3,
We'll work out about 5 meters.
4 or 5 meters. And how wide are we going to make the beds this year?
A meter.
A meter wide.
Yeah.
So we're going to have roughly 4 or 5 meter long by a meter wide with about a 45 to 50 centimeter wide pathway.
You're right, actually, it will be about 4 meters because we're going to be bringing this one in, aren't we?
This lovely bed of chard which has been overwintering that Rosa's been keeping an eye on, we're going to keep this because we're actually going to be widening this pathway that runs down the side of the propagation tables.
Yeah.
This is mostly our main access path in the polytunnel throughout the last several years. It's always been a bit narrow. Because we're changing the beds, that means we're no longer going to have access just walking up and down this way. The only access is going to be along this length. So we're going to widen this path. But we can do that in a few months' time once we've taken advantage of all that chard. Alright, so we've marked out a few beds. How many have we got? 1, 2, 3.
3. Yeah.
3 beds. And 2 pathways marked out. So like I said, the beds are a meter wide, pathways are 50 centimeters.
Much better to have that extra space
Yeah.
to walk. We've made the paths in this polytunnel extra thin because we were really trying to max out the amount of growing
35
space.
centimeters is in there.
Yeah, so you really had to kind of wobble between beds, and inevitably the beds end up getting smaller
Yeah.
anyway.
And I've got really big feet.
Yes.
So it's going to be nice for me to be able to squat without sort of bending my boots too much. They're just a little bit too big for a short-legged person to be able to get over.
I just got over, look.
Oh, and 6 months pregnant as well. Amazing. So, okay, so that is possible.
And I can squat and reach. It means that unlike the 75 centimetre beds that we usually have, where it's still a bit of a push for me to reach the other side of them, but I can from the pathway. These ones you really have to jump over and approach from the other side.
Or work with your buddy. I guess the reasons that we had 75 centimetre wide beds throughout the market garden, and so far I think the rest of the ones in the market garden are staying like that. We've had some ideas about changing the width, but for now I think they're all staying 75 centimetres out there. But in here we thought we would try it wider, and the reason that we're not sticking with the 75, well, we don't really use any of the landscape fabric anymore, the plastic which fitted that kind of size very well.
Yeah.
We don't use any of the implements on our BCS, we're not using a tiller or the plough, which are both 75 centimetres wide. And also considering this year is more of growing for the home and growing for ourselves as a family, we just thought we would down the sort of size, the big lengths of the beds. Sometimes it can be quite daunting to have a very long vegetable bed that you feel you've got to fill up.
Yeah, easier to organise these, isn't
Yeah,
it? You know,
I think
we can have an amount of something per bed, you know, 1 crop per bed still.
Alright, well it's looking nice. It's nice to have a few marked out, and because we've got over 2, we can take a bed each for working on. We're going to pull up some of this kale and either transplant it into another bed or in amongst the chard that we're leaving for the moment. And like I said, this chard will have, when the chard comes out, we'll make this into an access path. We've also got to do a little bit of weeding. As you can see, there's a few bits of grass and things coming in, so we'll just take them out. And then there will be some areas of compaction where we've had pathways, like where Rosa's walking used to be a pathway, so we'll probably get the broad fork and just relieve some of the compaction with that. But after that, really, yeah, it's just raking them out, and then we might dig down the pathways a little as well, just to be able to take that soil and put that on the beds, but not too much. We don't want to step down into a path or anything like that too much, because it will collect water. Okay.
Okay, so are we doing that right now?
Maybe not. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed that. Just wanted to give you a wee update with the beds and tell you what we're up to in the polytunnel and what we've got planned in the kind of vegetable growing area of the whole farm.
Yeah, it's going to look very different.
It will.
You like
I can't hold this pose for much longer. So.
I'm on tiptoes. Whew, it's hard filming when you're like 2 feet different in height. You basically are. Oh no, wait, I'm more than 4 foot.
Yeah. Just Oren.
No! Oh, sweetheart.
Oren just pulled out one of our pieces of bamboo holding our
the whole year.
bed shapes together. Anyway guys, thanks so much for your support. We'll catch you soon.